All praise going on is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith. I count it truly blessing each and every single time I come before you to preach the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm very late, and we'll get right into today's topic. And today's topic is dealing with the birth of Jesus. Peace to you, brother. The birth of Jesus in the Old Testament. You know, many people, they scoff at the Messiah, and they some reject Jesus. Now I'm saying Jesus, I'm speaking English, okay? Many reject him, and they say they claim to believe in the Old Testament, though. Well, he came, in matter of fact, let's just read it in the New Testament and just prove it. I'm gonna just show you just the birth. That's not all the other scriptures pertaining to him. But I'm in John, the 5th chapter, 39th verse. Here the Messiah, Jesus, he says something. He says, concerning the Old Testament, he says, search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. You know, many people back in the day, they would talking about his days, they rejected him, and they reject him today. And even if you want to know him today, those who claim to know him don't understand why he the Messiah. They think he the Messiah because Big Mama told him or told them that she's the Messiah. No, he's the Messiah because he came in the volume of the book. The scriptures foretell of the one that was to come, and he fits the description. So I want to pick it up and just to show you some things just about his birth. Not even getting his actions that he did, not even getting his death, just in his birth. I want to pick it up, and I'm not going to keep you long at all. It's going to be short. Micah, the 5th chapter. Micah, the 5th chapter. And I want to pick it up at verse 1. Micah, the 5th chapter, and verse 1. Because here it tells, verse 2, because here it tells you that where the Messiah is going to be born. It says, in Micah 5 and verse 2, it says, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Okay, so who is this talking about? It's talking about the Messiah. Okay, where was he to be born? He was to be born in Bethlehem. When you go to the New Testament, where was he born? He was born in Bethlehem. Okay, you read that in Matthew, the 2nd chapter. Okay, and it's in other places. So he was born in Bethlehem. He wasn't born in Chicago. He wasn't born in Rome. He wasn't born in Tokyo. He was born in Bethlehem. Okay, and that's one thing about it. You can't control where you are born. Okay, so he was born in Bethlehem. Okay, let's go to Isaiah, the 7th chapter. Because not only was he born in Bethlehem, let's see who he was born unto. Isaiah, the 7th chapter. Isaiah, the 7th chapter. And this is all in the Old Testament. That's why when I hear people that reject Jesus and, who made the New Testament, I don't believe that. But you don't know the Old Testament. Isaiah, the 7th chapter and verse 14. Here, he tells you the sign. Matter of fact, let me hold our finger there. I want to go back and just point something out in Micah that I didn't point out that I wanted to point out. Back in Micah, the 5th chapter, he says, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, so that's Judah, okay, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel. Okay, so that one that was born to be king is coming out of Bethlehem. Then it says, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Why? Because he was God in the beginning. That's why John 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. And then it says all things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. So that's why even Jesus himself, he said, before Abraham was, I am. He says that in John the 8th chapter. Why? Because he was God in the beginning. He's the one that Abraham was talking to. He's the one that Moses was dealing with. This is before he was manifested in the flesh. That's why it tells you in John 1 and verse 14, and the word dwelt among us. Right? it tells us that that one that was God in the beginning, he took upon the form of a flesh and blood man. Okay. It tells you, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Okay. So we know he was God in the beginning. Okay. But he was born a certain kind of way. And it tells us how he was born, or who he was born to. This is Isaiah the 7th chapter and verse 14. It says, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. What did Mary say? Why am I thus? What's going on? She had no man in the biblical sense, meaning she had not laid with Joseph, her husband, yet, but she was with child. And when Joseph found out she was with child, he was going to put her away pride, because if she was child, in his head, he hadn't done anything with her yet, because they were just espoused. They hadn't consummated the marriage, so he was going to put her away privately, because in Hebraic culture, when you look at the law, when you espouse, it's just like when you are married. That's just like if a man has sex with a woman who was espoused to another man, both of them could be put, that was considered like adultery. Both of them would be put to death. Okay, so he didn't want to make a public spectacle. He said, I'm gonna just put her away privately. But then the Lord had to show him that this is from the Lord. But we read that here in Isaiah. Isaiah the 7th chapter, verse 14, it says, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. That's why it's amazing that people would say that Joseph was the natural father of Jesus. They don't believe in a virgin birth, but the Bible is telling you of this. Some people even have a problem with this. Well, I don't know. But when you read it in the New Testament, then what's the issue that Joseph had then? Why is he going to put her away? Context tells us that she was a virgin. Therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Why Emmanuel? Emmanuel means God with us. That's why we read in Micah, the 5th chapter, that's why it says what it says about him. He's coming out of Bethlehem, and it says whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. He's Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, the same yesterday and today and forever. He was in the beginning with the Father. Okay? So it says, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. Meaning this virgin, she had no man, but she gonna have a baby. She gonna get pregnant and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay? But that's what he was. He was God with us. Okay? Now, we still dealing with his birth. Let's go to find out what was going on at the time of his birth. Let's go to Genesis, the 3rd chapter. Genesis, the 3rd chapter. Because here, and this is what's going on in the spiritual realm, but here, when the punishment is given out, okay, he said, I'm gonna start at verse 14, because he's dealing with this one they call Satan, that old serpent is Satan, the devil. That's who Eve and Adam were dealing with. Adam and Eve were dealing with. They were dealing with Satan. Okay, this wasn't a literal talking snake. Now, verse 14, it says in Genesis 3 and 14, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So you have to think, what is this dust? Well, this dust is man. This is symbolic of his position. This is all allegorical. This is symbolic of his position. He is the one that's going. That's why it says, in Job, it said, where hast thou been? Going to and fro on the earth. Peter tells you he's going to and fro on the earth, seeking whom he may devour. That's what he does until the time that he's going to be cast into the lake of fire. And he is on his job. Okay? So it says it says, dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. People say, ministers will come here and say, well, see, that's talking about how snakes used to walk upright. Now they slither on the ground. That is not what that's talking about. That's talking about position. Even if you think about it, when you read about Micaiah and what he saw. And one spirit was a lion spirit to those ministers. Okay? Those prophets rather. When Ahab was trying to convince Jehoshaphat to go up to Ramoth Gilead. See, that's the kind of thing he's doing. You look at what he did in Job. That's what he is doing. He's trying to destroy you. He's walking around as a lion seeking whom he may devour. But so that's his position. And then look what it says here. It says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Okay, so what is that talking about? This woman ultimately, just so we can understand this one. I'm going to take you to the New Testament just so we can understand. Let's go to Revelation, the 12th chapter, just so we can understand what was written in Genesis, the 3rd chapter right there. Let's go to Revelation, the 12th chapter. Because there is enmity there. Because he understands, because salvation is only coming through the Messiah. And he was trying to stop that. And we're going to look at something he did physically, that happened or manifested itself physically that took place to try to stop that. But it was something going on spiritually behind the scenes. This is Revelation, the 12th chapter. Revelation, the 12th chapter and verse 1. It says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now we have a woman here. But who is this woman? This woman is none other than she represents the nation of Israel. We know this because if you go to Genesis, the 37th chapter, Joseph, the patriarch, has a dream where the sun and the moon and the 11 stars make obeisance to him. They bow down to him in a dream. And then his father said, what? Am I, your mother, your brother will bow down to you? Well, they did make obeisance when they had to go up to the same one they sold into slavery. His brother sold him into slavery into Egypt. He ended up in Egypt as governor during the time of the famine. So now this represents Israel. Listen to what it says. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Now she pregnant. So this woman is pregnant. So out of this woman is coming this child. I'm going to skip down to verse 5. Well, actually, I'm going to keep reading. It says, and there appeared another one in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. This is none other than Satan. Okay, so this is talking about when you had a third part of the angels follow Satan. Okay, then it says, and the dragon, but then it says this, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, Satan wanted to devour the child. How is Satan devouring the child? Think about it. If the child, who was the child? Verse 5, and she brought forth a man child that was to rule all nations. With a rod of iron, and the child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Who was caught up unto God and to his throne? None other than the Messiah. None other than Christ. It said he was to rule all nations. If we go back and read, and again, once again, in the book of Micah, what does it say? In the book of Micah, chapter 5, it says, but thou, Bethlehem, Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee he shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel. That's why Pilate asked him, art thou the king of the Jews? Right? In Isaiah, real quick, still keep your finger in Revelation and in Genesis 3. In Isaiah, if you go to the 9th chapter, it's still talking about the same one. It says about it, it In verse 6, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom. And he had to fulfill his duty as a high priest first before he did that. It said, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So now, this child that's going to be born is be born king. That's why even when Jesus, they tried to make him king by force. Right? It simply was not time for him to establish his kingdom. He had to do his work as a high priest and make a sacrifice. The sacrifice was of himself. That's why John the Baptist said, behold, the Lamb of God was taking away the sin of the world. And now he's on the Father's throne, sitting on the right hand. We read in Psalms 110, sitting on the right hand of the Father. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit down on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. That's what David wrote. Who was his Lord? Got the Father and the Son. But in Revelation 12 and verse 5, it says, and she brought forth a man child, but he was trying to kill the baby, right? It says in verse 4, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So now, if you go back to Genesis 3 and 15, it says, and I will put enmity or hatred between thee and the woman. That's between Satan and the woman. And then it said, and between thy seed and her seed. Okay? So now, they are enemies. Okay? So now this one that's born from this woman is none other than the Christ. And that says, it shall bruise thy head. Oh, at the end of the day, Satan gonna be cast into the lake of fire. But he gonna bruise his heel. That's talking about Jesus being sacrificed. Died that horrific death. So now let's go to just to show you that, let's go to Jeremiah. See, this is even all in the Old Testament. This is just about his birth. Jeremiah, the 31st chapter. I'm going to pick it up in verse 15. Jeremiah 31 and verse 15. It says, thus saith the Lord, a voice he heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. What is that talking about? What is that talking about? Let's go just to show you that again in the New Testament, because some people you'll read that in the Old Testament and not understand it. Why is she weeping for her children? What's going on? Well, let's find out. Let's go to Matthew. Just so we know, Matthew 2 and verse 16. It says, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, because the wise men came, they came and they were warned not to go back to Herod because Herod demanded where they would be born. It says, then Herod, Matthew 2 and 16, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So now he having all the kids killed. That's why it says she's weeping for her children will be comforted because they are not. Because of the genocide that was taking place. Jeremiah was prophesying that. It said, then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy or Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they were not. Now, it tells you, just to pick this up, this other point, Deuteronomy the 18th chapter, real quick. Deuteronomy the 18th chapter, we're going to go to one more place. Deuteronomy the 18th chapter, and I'll pick it up in verse 15, because here we're going to find out something Moses wrote. He says, the Lord thy God, Deuteronomy 18 and 15, the Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee. He coming out of Israel. Of thy brethren, like unto me, unto him ye shall hearken. He going to be just like me. Now, this is just an example. We just read what happened to the children, why you had that genocide in the days of Herod, right? When Jesus was born, he was trying to kill him. But we also read in Revelation, the 12th chapter, that Satan stood before the woman to devour the child as soon as it was born. Okay? Now, that's what was going on spiritually. That's the enmity there. He's trying to kill the Messiah because he knows all banking on the Messiah. That's why even when he tempted him, that's what that was all about. To get him to fall, to get him to fail his mission. Right? But now we read here in Deuteronomy 18 chapter in the 15th verse that Moses said, a prophet like unto me is coming. What happened to him? Let's go to Exodus real quick. Exodus, the 2nd chapter, because Jesus is a prophet like unto Moses. He said he's going to be just like me. Let's see what happened in Moses' day. And we're just dealing with the birth of Jesus in the Old Testament. Exodus, the 2nd, Exodus, the 1st chapter. I'm going to pick it up at verse 15. It says, and the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, of which this name of the one was Shipra and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then shall he live. Then she shall live. Okay? So now they had, it was genocide going on back here, just like it was genocide going on in the days of Herod. In the days of Jesus. That's why I say a prophet like unto me, their lives are parallel. This is just an example. And then let's see what happened to Moses. It says in verse, I'm in Genesis 2 now, and verse 3, I'm going to just get to the heart of the matter. Because Moses is born, they're trying to hide the baby. They can't hide it no more or anymore. It says, and when she could not longer hide him, talking about Moses, when Moses' mother couldn't hide him anymore, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maids walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept, and she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. So now his mama got paid for nursing her own baby. But then it says something, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water. So now what? He was here in Egypt, in the household of the Egyptians. Well, when they was trying to kill Jesus, what happened to him? Let's go to Hosea the 11th chapter. Hosea the 11th chapter and verse 1. Hosea the 11th chapter and verse 1. It says, when Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. What? You'll just read this. You'll be like, what are you talking about? Well, just last place. Let's go to Matthew 2. Matthew 2. And verse, I'm going to pick it up at verse 13. Matthew 2 and verse 13. It says, and when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt. So now he's hidden in Egypt. Moses is hidden in the household of Pharaoh. Jesus is also hidden in Egypt. And be thou there until I bring, in the similar circumstances where the children his age are being killed. That's why I say, who can declare our generation? His generation. Who can declare it? All the children of his age were killed. It says, so the angel tells Joseph, right, in a dream. It says, arise, saying, arise. So it says, and the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Okay? But that's like Revelation 12. So when we read in Revelation 12 that Satan was standing before the woman to devour the child as soon as it was born, that's what it's saying, symbolic of what happened with Herod. It says, when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, out of Egypt have I called my son. See, this book is real, brothers and sisters. All these authors are saying the same thing. It's going right along with each other. And that's all that we read in the Old Testament just about his birth. That's just about his birth. That's not about, that's just birth. You can go on and on and on when it comes to the Messiah. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you'd like to leave a donation, 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. You can do that at our website, again, www.israelteach.org. Also, the books Enter Egypt Begin with Ships, The Pagan Origin of the Christian Holidays, Hair Like War, Feet Like Burn Brass, Killing Black Innocents, and For Then Shall Be Great Tribulation are all available on Amazon.com and other places where books are sold. And with that, brothers and sisters, peace to everybody that's listening. It's always my prayer that you are edified.